Well, I was right. When they poured that Babbitt, they poured it off center. I don't have an official layout table, so I'm over at the welding table. So I know what the level is here. I shimmed up the crank so that I've got it at the same level. It's not at 0, but everything's at the same level, so that's okay. I've got 10 thousandths on this side. Actually, it's 11. And right there is 0. You can actually visually see it because the gap there is wider than the gap down there. The only way to fix this is to send this stuff the 400 and some miles back and put it back in the queue. Now, I'm going to seriously think about this. I have about 1.5 thou here. I'm going to have about 1.5 thou in the piston. So that's going to allow for that piston to twist a little bit. And then I'll have 3.5 thousandths piston clearance. If this was a modern day engine, this would be going back. I am going to document everything I find and send it back to them. I'm not going to ask for my money back, but I'm going to clearly let them know that I will never endorse them as a machine shop. And it's sad because pre-war cars is what they do. Now, let me get this back over to the other bench and figure out what I want to do. I'm probably just going to start sizing the bushings or the piston pin bearing or Babbitts. I have to shim those. Well, technically they were supposed to shim them. I'm going to find out whether they did it correctly or not. Let's just say that's our next step. Where is the next screw up? That's what we're going to call the next procedure. I've started to size these. I've only done one journal so far. And I'm taking 2 measurements. Front and back of the journal. Up and sideways here. And they're pretty much exact down to the thousandths. I think there's 6/10 is the difference, which is like nothing. I started looking at the rod ends, and the only way for me to take accurate measurements is to make up a jig that's the exact size of the journal, bolt it to it and slide it off. It'd be like an alignment bar because the caps are sliding back and forth here, so they're using the pin to align it. Now, I did notice something looking at this, and I'm going to have to address it. Since the Babbitt has been poured off center, the shim is biased to one side, and I don't know if you can even see right there, but it's not wanting to focus too well. If any wear at all occurs on this, these shims on this side are going to start to dig into the pin. I'm going to remove material on this side of the shim pack to allow some wear to take place. I've come to the conclusion I am going to start pouring my own Babbitt from now on, or what I paid to have this done. I could buy my own equipment. I can modify the lathe to do the rods, and I might be able to even modify it to do the block. I threw a lot of money away. A lot of money away to somebody that did not take their time. This is another view of my dilemma. Look at all the Babbitt space I got on this side versus that side. You're looking at 3 generations of an experienced Babbitt pourers right there. I'm back in the Dykes book right now. I was looking for the spec. I've got it down to 2,000s clearance. I think it should be 1,500, but just verifying this because there's a spec out there that says so many inches of journal diameter equals so many thousandths of clearance. That's the number I'm looking for. This journal is 2 1/4. So I'm just trying to verify that number. I used to know it, but like everything else, it's leaving my head. But what I did find is when I was saying that the shims should be on the same, they should be shimmed the same size with the same amount of shims on each side. So that's where that's called out on the book. I'm not just making this out. And then here's where it's talking about the rod alignment and the rod twist. They cast that into the bearing. You saw in the one video, or you will see, that it's 20 thousandths out. By them not casting that Babbitt properly, there is a tilt 20 thousandths one direction in that rod. I'm going to go ahead and put it together, and my thought process on that is I've got thrust Babbitt on each side here that'll wear. I'll run the engine for about a year, and then I'll pull the pan down and see how bad it is, then address it then. I don't think there'll be a catastrophic failure because of this. There will be some knocking that'll tell me there's a problem coming, and that'll give me time to go ahead and do it. So let me get back and start searching the numbers. Well, I found the spec, and it's 1/10 of an inch for every inch in diameter. I've got it at 2 thousandths now, but I'd like to get it down to between 1.5 and 2. The way I'm going to do this is these shims were used in the engine that was rebuilt, and there's some corrosion and dirt on them. So what I'm going to do, the shims come in 2 thousandths, 4 thousandths, and 6 thousandths. So I am just going to lightly rub these shims on here to clean them up a little bit, and I should be able to get a thou out of that, or a half a thou, and get me to where I need to be. That is the plan. Let's see how it goes. What I got going on now is I want to loosely check this just by feel to see if the gap between the pin and the bore is correct. When I picked up the block, crank and everything, I asked them what they torqued this to when they machined it, and they said it was 45. So I'm taking it to 45. I'll just step it up to 45. I'll do like 10 and then 20 and then or 25 and then take it up to 45. Now this should move on its own. I got a little bit of a tight spot in there. I'm not too sure what that's about. It's starting to move in. It does feel somewhat the way it's supposed to. What I might have going on is some of the shims hitting the crank. What it should do is stand on its own. It should be standing on its own, and then when I tilt it, it should drop lightly. This is not bad. I would say go with this, but I feel a tight spot and then it loosened. So let's get this cap off and Plastigage it and see what's going on here. I want to rotate this over so that I actually use the bench to hold the rod in place. And I want to take a peek and see if those shims are cocked in there. It's going to be hard because they're going to want to move. No, I don't have a shim problem. Let's Plastigage this. Whoop! Got the whole thing. Don't want that. Let me just set that off to the side. We don't want to go about the center of the cap. I want to avoid the groove as much as I can. Oh, hold on here. We got a little bit of or a high spot in the cap here that I gotta clean up. I don't know if it was dirt or something else. It's coming right off, whatever it is. Make sure the oil dipper's facing the right direction. I think I already said that. If I didn't, you just heard it for the first time. I don't see the Plastigage in the oil hole, so I avoided that. Kind of iron it in a little bit so the cap isn't biased to one side. That's all that needs to set up that Plastigage. My hands are the way they are. That doesn't look good to me. That is 3/1000. So I am going to have to start removing shims. Let me clean this up again. These are 2000 shims. He's biased to one side with an extra shim. I might get away with taking that shim out, getting it closer to the way it should have been. Well, my Plastigage just fell down here. I had to do some scraping on the bearings too. I'll get into that with another rod journal and show you how that takes place. So I got the rod to where it's moving freely. I cleaned up the shims that had dirt or patina, let's call it patina on it, 100-year patina. And if my calculations are correct, I should be able to get this on the small side of 2000s. I've been working on this for 2.5 hours now. One rod. How did they do this at the factory? That is the big question. Now, the book says they can burn in these too, which would mean they'd set them tight and they would dry run them with a dyno machine. Oh yeah, that looks better. That looks a lot better. And where's my Plastigage at? Thou and a half. It's not exactly uniform all the way across. It should be. I know the diameter of the journal is round, so the play that we're getting is in the Babbitt bearing, or the difference. So it's running 2/1000 to 1 thou and a half. Calling this one done. Woo. I'll go ahead, clean it up, put the cap back on, get it out of the way, and move on to the next journal. I'm on rod number 2, and I need to scrape these bearings. I got fairly good movement here, and then it gets a little tight. I can move it all the way around, but I want it to move freely everywhere. So what I do is I take and move this rod around the journal a few times, and it causes dark spots in the Babbitt. And those dark spots are the high spots that I'll scrape out with the scraper. There's another method of doing this is you put bluing on here. You set the rods and caps on there, and then the bluing gets transferred to the cap. That method works fantastic if you want your hands to be blue for a few days. This method takes a little longer because I snug it up just lightly, and I repeat the process multiple times. Okay, I'll get you to the scraping process here in a second. There's two ways I approach this. You can see where it was binding right here. It also bound right here. What I like to do is get the binding on the side out of the way first, and then work on the inside here. Since this is the first time I've started scraping this, I'll just go ahead and do both of them right now. I'm just lightly dragging this over until the scuff mark is gone. I'm not putting any pressure at all, or very little on this. You can see the scuff mark is gone. I'm not going to worry about that now. There isn't one on this side. There's some contact right here. And the reason this happens is you can't see, but there's micro grooves in here from when they machined the Babbitt. It's completely normal. I'm just going ahead and knocking down the higher grooves that would scuff up in the journal if I didn't take it off, and it would lead to problems. It literally could take anywhere from 5 minutes to an hour to do each one of these journals. I don't have any marks here, so I don't have to go any farther. I have a few here, but they're very light. Under the rod, I got nothing. On the thrust side here, I got a good one right here. You can see where it was definitely binding right here. That's taken off of there. And some here. I'll probably repeat this process a few more times. The key is to massage it down. I had some really good contact right there. The key is to massage it down just a little bit at a time. Hey, let's go put it on. I've been playing with this rod for the last hour and a half, and I'm done. I've got it down to 200 2000s, so I'm gonna play with this tomorrow. I'm done for the day. Green belts it is.